Right, welcome to the Gravy Lecture Series Part 1. Today I'll be doing a Part 1 on the recipe for social disorder. As a professor of political science, a lot of the time the most important question or debate that comes up in the classroom is, why isn't the world look the way I want it to look? Why do we have so many problems in this country, in our community, in our city, in our society? Why do we have so much chaos and problems? Why doesn't the world look the way I want it to look or the way that I feel it should look? Today I am going to offer you the first part of answering that question with the recipe for social disorder. So, the first part of recognizing why the world is messed up or does not look the way it should is 1, emotionalism has replaced the intellect and reason. Emotionalism means just a over-reliance on a person's feelings, their heart, their hunger, their passions, things that, of course, that describe to the feelings of the body. Versus, of course, intellect, reason, our knowledge, our wisdom, our intelligence, things that we have accumulated objectively, okay? So in our modern society, in our current culture, in our current politics, government, you name it, emotionalism has completely dominated the ability for us to act intellectually or with reason. All of our current decision makings are made based on emotions. Who we marry, where we live, where we go to school, what kind of car we drive, are all just emotional decisions and are no longer based anything on facts, reason, and intellect. Beating facts over the head of the intelligent people is very easy. Unfortunately, facts and intelligence to the masses, not so much. How has this gotten this way? The most important way that this idea of emotionalism has taken place is through widespread individualism. And focus, again, my feelings, how I feel, this is what I want. All these things are what currently dictate all decision making when it comes to masses and at least 95% of the population. Why do we have so much rampant individualism within our society? This idea of the myth of equality. Ladies and gentlemen, equality does not exist. It's not a fact. It's a non-objective reality. There is widespread inequalities. Inequality is the fact of nature. People are just naturally going to be better looking, obviously, smarter, bigger, faster, stronger, and all of these things aren't necessarily meaning of better, but they are unequal. The problem that we have, of course, is it makes people feel bad to know that they're not the same as everybody else. And so we have attached value to things like tall, beauty, bigger, faster, and stronger, which inherently have no value inherently by themselves, but society places value on these things based on their need. So being tall is only a good thing if you're in a society where tall things are up high and being tall is a good thing. If you're in a small place or you live in a cave, being tall maybe not so good. Thus, being short is the inherent good. Thus, the value of inequality and the value of equality are just self-constructed, and in this case, society constructed. Equality is a myth, doesn't exist. People are inherently unequal everywhere we go and everywhere you look. Rampant inequality. But we are forcing equality on a society where it does not exist. We're forcing equality down the mouths of an avenue, or in this case, an institution that it has absolutely no place. Mainly because it makes people feel bad to know that they are not the same as others. So we have created thus this myth, this magical fallacy, right, that we're all the same when we're not. Pushing thus, then, you see a huge square peg into a round hole. Individualism, myth of equality. This, of course, leads to point number 2, because after you figured out that we're all not the same, and there's just rampant individualism, and no longer are people making decisions based on intelligence and reason, we've got a magical world of idealism versus one based in reality. Okay? Ideally, how the world should look in all great terms versus how the world really looks. This is the way the world should be. This is the kind of life you should have, husband you should have. This is the real world, right? The life that you really have, the school that you really go to. Unfortunately, for too many times, we've already established out this idea of individualism and the myth of equality, it ultimately leads us to the ideal lifestyle and the way we ideal want things to be, again, generally based on feelings, versus the real world and reality, okay? The perfect example of this dichotomy of individualism and idealism versus reality is the idea of economic mobility. This is one of the biggest myths we aspire to here in American government, right, or American politics. People actually believe that if they just get up every single day and work hard and go to school and pay a job, that someday you'll be rich, right? That someday the 95% will be as rich as the 5%, or that someday you'll be the 2%. This is why 18 to 24-year-olds never understand economics or politics and vote Democratic all their lives and never understand it. You're never going to be rich. There is a system in place for why the 95% are always the 95% and the 5% are always the 5%. Why is that? It's because economic mobility does not exist either. Just like the myth of equality, the idea of people in this country working themselves up from being poor to being rich is an illusion. And it's a bad one that we have, again, perpetuated over and over way too many times. The idea that the person, a working class person or a poor person in this country can go from poor to rich is almost impossible. 95% of the people in this country who live in the same social class die in the same social class. So a lot of the times, 95% of the time then, if you're born poor, you die poor. If you're born rich, you die rich. There is no economic mobility in this country whatsoever. Only people, of course, that small 5%, people who win the lottery, of course, who we all know end up broke 10 years later, or athletes or some kind of musician, artist, some person, of course, with some kind of talent who then is able to take their family or themselves from poor and to rich. But even then, this percentage are small to none. As we know, the amount of people who make the NBA or make the NFL or have record contracts are very slim. So again, the idea that economic mobility, that people in this country can just work hard to get rich is impossible. It's completely an ignorant position to make. It almost absolutely never happens, okay? So idealism versus reality. Ideally, yes, we would all be rich one day. We can all have great things. The reality of it is, never happens for 95% of you guys, and that is part of the myth, and that is partly based on this idea of us all being the same. When again, we're not all going to work the same, we don't all have the same attributes, passions, and desires, so forcing equality down our throats just will never work. Because of this problem of idealism and reality, we have created a new way to help us feel better about our differences, to make us feel better about being unequal. And this is the creation of grayness. The creation of everything being gray almost solves the problem of idealism versus reality, because now no one knows what anything means anymore. All right? Instead of it making people feel bad to say that somebody is obese or to say somebody is non-intelligent, we now say, well, now obesity means a plethora of things, and now no one knows what it means to be fat anymore. No one knows what it means to be smart anymore, because these things have all taken societal shifts and changes, because somewhere down the line, somebody felt bad about being fat or being stupid, and now we've had to muddy the waters in order to make them feel the same as everybody else. The same thing goes with sex, the same thing goes with race, you name it. All of these things, our objective reality being completely upside down, mainly because objective reality and facts and truth make people feel bad. It will make people feel bad to know they're not as smart as other people. Thus, we dummy down tests, we create C's to get degrees, and we completely make it obsolete to be anything other than just mediocre and the promotion of mediocrity that we'll get to later. But basically all we have done is just create an ideal world where everything is subjective. We no longer know what anything means. Thus, it's hard to place anybody in any kind of category for which they can now feel accepted or unaccepted. I don't want to be left out of the fat group or the thin group, so let's just muddy up what fat or thin means so that everyone can be included. The same thing goes with blackness and race, the whole idea. No longer knows what black is because it makes people feel bad if they're not black or that they are and they're not. Thus, we just muddy it up and people just identify with whatever race that they choose to. People just identify based on how they feel, whatever race and or sex they want to, based on their feelings, not based on any kind of intellect or reason. So the creation of grayness fuels not only unintelligence, but it fuels the idea of idealism overtaking our reality based on this idea of the myth of equality and rampant individualism. The second part that we have here of why idealism versus reality is taking place is that it takes a lot of hard work to get to the truth. right? And we are now living in a fast-food society. We're now living in an online degree, online high school, online elementary school type society now, where people have absolutely no qualms and or interest in actually doing any meaningful hard work, and people can just get degrees and everything else it is in 2 years and everything else. PhDs online, everybody just Wikipedia and no one doing any real research, no more real printed in books. Why? Because it takes a long time. It takes too hard to get to facts. It takes a long time to get to objective truth. These things are difficult. This is why a lot of the older people were a lot smarter than we are now, because they understood that it took a long time to get to the actual truth of things, to actually develop facts and reason and knowledge. People want knowledge overnight by looking things up on Google. You'll never get intellectual wisdom, or you'll never advance intellectualism by speedy, fast food knowledge. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of books and a lot of research to actually figure out what the world is and what it looks like. And thus, when people see how hard it actually is to actually get to the truth, they sell for greatness. We'll get to the art of selling in a much later time, but the idea is once you look at the book, you look at all the knowledge that it takes and the time it takes to gain facts and to get smarter and be a better person, people just sell for greatness because it takes too hard to get to black and white. I know a lot of times people think the world ain't black and white, but a lot of things are black and white, but we refuse to because black and white makes us feel bad. Thus, we settle for the greatness because it takes a lot of hard work to get to the truth. Last but not least, and of course, when hard work and everything else it is gone out of the window and you can't get any further, we get, of course, my favorite, widespread ignorance, right? The inability to know, or whether they know or not, and not doing any better, right? We'll have a lot of time to focus on that. But once we get to the idea that people no longer want to work hard, people just want to settle for greatness in the unintelligent life, we get our current society where we have, right, at number 3 here, you can see we've got the perpetuation of ignorance. Widespread, rampant individualism, widespread ignorance from the highest social order down to the lowest. We've just completely lost all ideas of the real world and of intellectual reality. Another example, or one way, of course, to look at this kind of perpetuation of ignorance, of course, is the idea of objectivity, right, versus subjectivity, right? The idea, of course, no longer are people, of course, able to be subjective or objective, right? The idea of being able to look at something or look at a situation and take themselves completely out of it. Whether you're influenced in it or not, whether you're a part of it or not, can you look at a situation or read a book or read a text or a file or find any kind of piece of music or art and look at it from a perspective besides your own? Look at a piece of book or a movie besides your own perspective. Look at a piece of literature outside of your own. Take a position on an issue and take an issue on that issue, take a side on that issue that's not your own. Look at abortion or look at race or look at affirmative action from someone else's perspective besides your own. Of course, with an emotional world, that is no longer possible. Okay, when the focus is always on how I feel, when the focus is always on my personal feelings, this idea we need to force everyone to all be the same, and we never get to that point. Of course, with widespread confusion that leads to why things are that way, we'll never get to a world where people are able to be objective. Get to a place where people can say, I don't know how to handle all the issues, this doesn't even concern me, but because I have an intellectual, reasonable mind, I can deduce certain information and or facts to be able to come up with some kind of reasonable conclusion, all right? So the idea, of course, we've lost all objectivity. Every single issue that comes up, it is just widespread emotional ignorance that comes out of people's mouths, mainly because they have no ability or possibility of looking at that issue from someone else's instance. And we can look at many issues such as immigration, you name it, affirmative action, healthcare, welfare, all these things. All these things just muddied up with greatness, muddied up with emotional reactions and non-facts. If people knew who actually was on welfare, the whole discussion of welfare would probably be a whole lot different. But the emotional reaction of welfare is welfare queen, black people on welfare, a bunch of more black people on welfare all the time, mudding everything up. When the actual facts completely disagree with that, and the facts, of course, that there's more white people in the South on welfare than anybody else. Would you know that? Absolutely not. Why? Mainly because, one, again, ignorance, whether you do know and you don't care, or you don't know and you haven't really tried to know, mainly because your emotions tell you that it affects me this way, it affects this person a different way, and it affects me negatively, thus I don't like it. I am going to just completely buck all knowledge and facts and have a wholly negative perception of another group of people based on nothing other than how they make me feel or how what they're doing makes me feel. That could be completely wrong. I can be poor white people who vote Republican, for crying out loud, who completely vote against their interests every single year. Why is that? An emotional reaction. I hate Democrats, I hate liberals, I hate progressives, and I hate blacks. Thus, this party speaks to me, Confederate flag. Even though I'm voting completely against my interests every single time. Of course, these people cost me jobs. These people cost us money. These people cost us, government funding for better education. But because those people are the party of blacks and of liberals and homosexuals, I am going to completely just buck what's actually in my best interest and make an emotional reaction and vote a different way. All of these things, ladies and gentlemen, all of these things, from emotionalism to a complete idealistic world that is completely unattached from reality, to the complete perpetuation of ignorance, widespread ignorance overtaking our society. Lack of objectivity and a completely subjective world now where no one thinks for themselves, no one thinks with any kind of objective mind or push towards intellectualism. We have just completely abandoned facts and intellectual pursuits for a world of grayness and cheap knowledge and cheap tricks education. Lord have mercy. We will get to the end of this. This is only part one. I thank you for joining me right here on the Recipe for Social Disorder. If you get a chance, please visit our website at www.gravyology.com. Again, that's www.gravyology.com. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more.